The British monarchy just made a move that nobody saw coming, and Westminster is in absolute chaos right now. King Charles has just done something that breaks centuries of royal tradition, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer is reportedly furious behind closed doors. What happened just 3 minutes ago has sent shockwaves through Parliament, and Nigel Farage is at the centre of it all. The establishment is panicking, backroom deals are being exposed, and the future of British politics might never be the same again. This isn't just another political scandal. This is a constitutional earthquake that's happening in real time, and you need to hear what's really going on before the mainstream media spins this into oblivion. The news broke just moments ago, and insiders at Westminster are scrambling to contain what might be the biggest political bombshell in modern British history. According to multiple sources close to Buckingham Palace, King Charles has made an unprecedented decision that completely blindsided the Labour government. We're talking about a move so dramatic, so unexpected, that even seasoned political analysts are struggling to make sense of what's happening right now. The palace has been unusually quiet over the past 48 hours, which should have been the first warning sign that something massive was brewing behind those ancient walls. But nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, predicted that the king would take this kind of action. Here's what we know so far. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK and one of the most controversial figures in British politics, has apparently been granted extraordinary access to Royal Council in what some are calling an unprecedented constitutional intervention. Now, before you think this is just another conspiracy theory, understand that this information is coming from sources who have never been wrong about palace matters before. The king has reportedly expressed deep concerns about the current direction of the government, particularly regarding issues of national sovereignty, immigration policy, and what he perceives as a disconnect between Westminster and the British people. And he's chosen Nigel Farage, of all people, as the voice he wants to hear. The timing of this couldn't be more explosive. Keir Starmer's government has been facing mounting pressure from multiple directions. His approval ratings have been plummeting faster than anyone expected, with recent polls showing that public trust in Labour has hit historic lows just months after their landslide victory. The British people are frustrated, they're angry, and they feel betrayed by promises that seem to evaporate the moment politicians take office. Meanwhile, Reform UK has been gaining ground at an alarming rate for the establishment. Farage has been drawing massive crowds to his rallies, and his message of taking back control and putting Britain first is resonating with millions of voters who feel completely abandoned by the traditional parties. But what exactly has King Charles done that has Starmer so rattled? According to our sources, the king has invoked an ancient constitutional provision that allows the monarch to seek counsel from any British citizen on matters of national importance. This isn't technically handing over power in the way we might traditionally think about it, but it's something far more significant in practical terms. By elevating Farage to the position of special advisor on matters of national concern, the king has essentially given him a direct line to the throne and a platform that carries immense symbolic weight. In the British system, where so much depends on tradition, precedent and unwritten constitutional conventions, this is absolutely massive. The establishment is in complete meltdown mode right now. Labour MPs are reportedly holding emergency meetings to discuss how to respond to what they're calling a constitutional crisis. Some are even whispering about challenging the king's authority, which would be unprecedented in modern times and could trigger a constitutional showdown, unlike anything Britain has seen in generations. The relationship between the monarchy and elected government has always been delicate, built on mutual respect and the understanding that the crown stays out of partisan politics. But what happens when the king believes that the elected government is failing the people so badly that he has a duty to intervene? That's the question everyone is asking right now, and there are no easy answers. Keir Starmer emerged from number 10 earlier today looking absolutely shaken. Though he tried to maintain his composure for the cameras, those who know him well say they've never seen him this rattled. He refused to answer questions about the King's decision, only saying that he would be making a statement to Parliament in due course. But his body language told a completely different story. This is a Prime Minister who suddenly realises that his authority, his mandate, and his entire political agenda might be under threat from a direction he never anticipated. The palace has essentially thrown down a gauntlet, and Starmer has no clear playbook for how to respond without either appearing weak or triggering a full-blown constitutional crisis. Behind the scenes, the real battle is just beginning. Labour insiders are furious, claiming that this is an outrageous overstep by the monarchy and that it undermines the democratic will of the British people who voted for a Labour government. But here's the uncomfortable truth they don't want to face. Millions of those same British people are cheering this decision right now. The comment sections across social media are exploding with support for the King's move, with people saying it's about time someone stood up to the political establishment and listened to what ordinary citizens have been saying for years. The disconnect between Westminster and the rest of the country has never been more obvious, and King Charles seems to have recognised this in a way that terrifies the political class. Nigel Farage, for his part, has remained surprisingly measured in his public response. Rather than gloating or using inflammatory rhetoric, he issued a carefully worded statement saying that he is honoured by the King's confidence and that he takes this responsibility with the utmost seriousness. He emphasised that this isn't about party politics, but about ensuring that the voices of forgotten communities across Britain are finally heard at the highest levels. It's a masterclass in political positioning, and it's driving Labour absolutely crazy because they can't attack him without appearing to attack the King himself. Farage has been handed a political gift beyond measure, and he knows exactly how to use it without overplaying his hand. The constitutional experts are being bombarded with requests for interviews right now, and they're struggling to provide clear guidance because this situation exists in a grey area that British constitutional law has never really had to address in the modern era. The monarch has the right to be consulted, to encourage and to warn the government. But actively seeking counsel from a political figure outside the government, especially one as polarising as Nigel Farage, pushes those boundaries in ways that make constitutional scholars deeply uncomfortable. Some are arguing that the King is well within his rights, that this is exactly the kind of situation where the monarch should step in as a check on government power. Others are warning that this could open Pandora's box and fundamentally alter the relationship between Crown and Parliament in ways that could destabilise British democracy itself. What makes this situation even more complex is the context in which it's happening. Britain is facing multiple crises simultaneously, and the government's response to each one has been widely criticised as inadequate or actively harmful. The immigration crisis has reached levels that even supporters of open borders are finding difficult to defend. Small boats continue to cross the Channel daily, and the costs associated with housing, feeding, and processing migrants have spiralled into billions of pounds, while ordinary British citizens struggle with the cost of living crisis. Starmer promised solutions during the campaign, but months into his premiership, the situation has only gotten worse. The British people are watching their communities change beyond recognition, and when they voice concerns, they're often dismissed as bigots or told they're on the wrong side of history. Then there's the economic situation, which is frankly terrifying for millions of families across the United Kingdom. Inflation may have cooled slightly from its peak, but prices remain stubbornly high for basic necessities. Energy bills are crushing household budgets, mortgage payments have skyrocketed for those coming off fixed rate deals, and the dream of home ownership has become laughably unattainable for an entire generation of young people. Meanwhile, the government seems more interested in virtue signalling on international stages and pursuing ideological projects than addressing the bread and butter issues that actually affect people's daily lives. The frustration is palpable, and it's been building for years across multiple governments. People feel like they're being governed by an elite class that lives in a completely different reality and has nothing but contempt for ordinary citizens. This is the environment in which King Charles has made his move, and it's crucial to understand that context. The King has spent his entire life preparing for the role of monarch, watching, listening and learning about the British people and their concerns. Unlike politicians who are insulated by their parties, their donors and their ideological bubbles, the King has a unique perspective that spans decades and crosses all social boundaries. He's met with people from every walk of life, from the wealthiest aristocrats to struggling families in former industrial towns that have been left behind by globalisation. And what he's seen has apparently concerned him deeply enough that he felt compelled to take action that he knew would be controversial. The question everyone is asking now is what exactly this means in practical terms. What power has actually been transferred to Nigel Farage, and what can he do with it? The answer is both everything and nothing, depending on how you look at it. Formally, Farage hasn't been given any executive power. He can't pass laws, he can't override government decisions, and he can't force Parliament to do anything. But informally, symbolically and politically, he's been given something far more valuable: legitimacy and platform at the highest level of British society. When Nigel Farage speaks now, he doesn't just speak as the leader of an upstart political party. He speaks as someone who has the ear of the king. That changes everything. The implications for British politics are absolutely staggering. Reform UK was already surging in the polls, threatening to split the right-wing vote and potentially even overtake the Conservatives as the main opposition to Labour. But this development supercharges Farage's political movement in ways that money simply cannot buy. Every time he speaks about betrayed promises, ignored communities and out-of-touch elites, his words now carry the implicit backing of the monarchy. Labour and the Conservatives are facing a political realignment that could reshape British politics for generations, and they have no clear strategy for how to combat it. Traditional attack lines don't work when your opponent has been elevated by the king himself. Inside Labour Party headquarters, the mood is reportedly one of barely controlled panic. Senior strategists are gaming out scenarios, and none of them are good. If they attack the king's decision too harshly, they risk alienating moderate voters who still have deep respect for the monarchy and appearing to put party politics above constitutional tradition. But if they don't push back hard, they essentially concede that the king was right to seek alternative counsel, which implies that Labour is failing so badly that intervention was necessary. It's a political trap with no obvious exit, and Keir Starmer is walking into it with each passing hour of silence. His advisors are surely screaming at him to say something, anything. But what can he possibly say that doesn't make the situation worse? Meanwhile, the Conservative Party is watching all of this with a mixture of horror and schadenfreude. On one hand, they're delighted to see Labour squirming and facing a crisis that they can't seem to manage. On the other hand, they recognise that this development is potentially catastrophic for them as well. If Reform UK becomes the party that the monarchy implicitly endorses, or at least takes seriously, then the Conservatives lose their main selling point as the natural party of government and defenders of British tradition. Rishi Sunak must be having nightmares about the next election, where voters might decide that if even the king thinks the political establishment isn't listening, then maybe it's time to vote for real change rather than the same old faces promising things they never deliver. The international reaction has been swift and predictable. European leaders are maintaining diplomatic silence publicly, but privately they're reportedly alarmed by this development. A Britain led by someone influenced by Nigel Farage, even indirectly, is a Britain that might take a much harder line on issues like immigration, trade and cooperation with EU institutions. The special relationship with the United States is also potentially affected depending on how this situation evolves. American commentators are split along predictable political lines, with conservatives praising what they see as a pushback against woke politics and progressives warning about the dangers of populism and threats to democracy. Everyone has an opinion, and most of those opinions are filtered through their own political biases rather than actual understanding of British constitutional arrangements. What's being lost in all the political noise is the underlying question that prompted this crisis in the first place. Are the British people being properly represented by their elected government? And if not, what mechanisms exist to address that failure? In most democracies, the answer would be simple: wait for the next election and vote them out. But Britain is experiencing something more profound than normal political dissatisfaction. There's a growing sense that the entire system is broken. that elections change faces but never policies, and that ordinary citizens have been locked out of decisions that fundamentally affect their lives and their country's future. When people lose faith in democratic processes, when they believe that voting doesn't actually change anything meaningful, that's when societies become dangerously unstable. King Charles has apparently decided that doing nothing while this crisis of confidence deepens is a greater risk than the controversy his intervention would create. It's a calculated gamble that could either cement his legacy as a monarch who truly served his people, or could provoke a constitutional crisis that weakens or even ends the monarchy itself. The stakes could not be higher, and everyone involved knows it. This isn't a game. This isn't political theatre for entertainment. This is a genuine inflection point in British history, where decisions made in the next few days and weeks could determine the country's trajectory for decades to come. The palace has released only the most minimal official statement confirming that the king has exercised his constitutional prerogative to consult with individuals on matters of national importance, and that Mr. Farage is one of several people with whom His Majesty maintains dialogue. That carefully neutral language is doing absolutely nothing to calm the situation, because everyone understands what it really means. The king doesn't casually elevate political figures to special advisory status unless something serious is happening. This is a message being sent not just to Keir Starmer's government, but to the entire British political establishment. Change course, start listening to the people, or face consequences. Nigel Farage's critics, and he has legions of them, are predictably losing their minds over this development. They're accusing the king of betraying his constitutional duty to remain politically neutral, of giving legitimacy to dangerous populism, and of opening the door to far-right extremism. These accusations are being amplified across mainstream media outlets that have spent years trying to marginalise Farage and everything he represents. But here's the problem with that narrative. It requires believing that millions of British voters who support Farage and Reform UK are all bigots, idiots, or dupes being manipulated by a demagogue. That's not just wrong, it's politically suicidal. Those voters are parents worried about their children's futures, workers who've seen their industries destroyed and communities decline, and citizens who feel that their concerns about rapid demographic change are met with contempt rather than compassion. The argument that King Charles should have remained neutral might carry more weight if neutrality hadn't effectively meant endorsing the status quo that so many people find unacceptable. When both major parties support broadly similar policies on fundamental issues, when the options presented to voters are essentially variations of the same globalist progressive agenda, just with different coloured ties, then staying neutral isn't neutral at all. It's taking a side whether intended or not. The king appears to have recognised that true neutrality in this environment meant ensuring that voices being systematically excluded from the corridors of power are finally heard. That's not populism, that's democracy functioning as it should. The coming days are going to be absolutely critical. Parliament is scheduled to sit next week, and all eyes will be on what Keir Starmer says when he addresses MPs about this situation. He's going to face hostile questions from all sides, Conservatives smelling blood in the water, Reform UK demanding to know why the government has lost the King's confidence, and even some from his own backbenches who are terrified that this crisis could cost them their seats at the next election. Starmer is a skilled lawyer and debater, but this isn't a courtroom where he can rely on procedure and precedent. This is raw politics at its most brutal, and his opponents are circling like sharks. The legal and constitutional challenges are also beginning to emerge. Several left-wing activist groups have already announced that they're exploring legal options to challenge the King's decision, arguing that it violates the principle of government by elected representatives. These challenges are almost certainly doomed to fail because British constitutional law gives the monarch extremely wide latitude in matters of counsel and advisement, but they'll generate headlines and keep the story in the news cycle for weeks or months.